Hey, what's up, guys? It's another episode of Fantasy Football at Night. This is Thomas Christopher with my man Brandon Haye. And how you doing today, man? I see you got the
I'm
name change there.
yeah. I thought I would change it. Once you hear episode one, you'll understand where it is. And please, Lamar, don't cancel me. I think you're really good. It's just I think some people overrate you a little bit,
Yeah, we'll get into that
including
at another time,
yourself,
I'm
since
sure.
you think that you're going to throw for 6,000 yards.
Yeah, that when you showed me that was kind of crazy. I'm like, come on, you got to hit at least 4,000 for even 3,500. Like, come on, let's be real. So, if you guys checked out our last episode, we talked about rookie wide receivers. This time, we're talking about rookie running backs. We're going to kind of do the same thing, hit with the first round, our favorite running backs, and then we're going to try to hit our sleepers. And if we have enough time, we'll talk about some busts potentially. So, starting off, of course, we got Robinson, who went to the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, everybody knows he's the RB1 of this draft. How do you feel about him in Dynasty going forward, though, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, I think really well dynasty wise, went to a good landing spot. I was surprised. I know people have talked about the Falcons or maybe the Eagles picking him in the top 10 with the devaluing of the running back position. I just didn't think he would go that high, but he did, and um, really kills Algiers' value. Even though they said they find him more the physical back, but I mean Bijan's physical too, so I highly doubt they're going to take that many, short yardage or goal line carries away from Bijan. Saw him practice today and catching some passes. He's great out of the backfield. He's one of the most complete backs that I've seen in a long time. So I think he's going to be great for Dynasty. With some of the situations, I don't want to put him too high Dynasty for running backs, but there's not a lot of great situations right now. So he's probably right up there.
Do you have him in the top three? Like,
Yes, probably top three. If not top three, definitely top five.
do you have? I'm just curious. Do you have Brees Hall ahead of him?
No, I do
No.
not, because I think that the Jets with Rodgers are going to maybe throw the ball a little more, and I think they like those other bats a little. And with him coming off the ACL, I don't think Brees is getting 100% of all of those touches, and I don't even know if he didn't get injured, if he would have controlled all of that, because teams don't really do that with running backs very much anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point. I kind of think the same thing too. As far as Robinson is concerned, I think Arthur Smith, he was offensive coordinator of the Titans when, with Derrick Henry. I think he's going to kind of use Robinson as like that workhorse back. I Do you think we see like something with how we used like Cordarrelle Patterson? Do you think like we see that type of usage in the running and passing game, or do you think he like is? Do you think he controls more of like the snap count?
Oh, that's a tough question. I don't know how much they'll actually use him, in the passing game. Um, I think a lot of this comes down to the development of Desmond Ritter, because if he still isn't developed enough, I mean, they could give Bijan the ball like 20, 25 times a game. If sign me up for that, even with no targets, or one target a game, he's just that good.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So the next running back I want to talk about is probably the other guy who got picked in the first round, which I didn't have him going in the first round. I was surprised when they picked him, and that's Jahmyr Gibbs. Did you think that he was going to be taken 12 overall by the Lions in that first round?
Definitely did not. It killed me as a DeAndre Swift, lover, a DeAndre Swift owner, in my fantasy leagues. But I really, really loved Jahmyr Gibbs, even back when he was at Georgia Tech. I actually think the things he did at Georgia Tech were more impressive because that team was shitty as hell. And he was doing everything. And some people say he can't, he's just a pass catching back. He can run between the tackles. Obviously, he's not the best at it, but I think he has good vision, good speed, good balance. I thought he would go maybe in the back end of the first, but I was very surprised he went that high. But apparently, the Lions loved him. Um, in my opinion, they are getting a better version of DeAndre Swift, at least coming out of college. And also they said they want to play him in the slot and outside some, and he's able to do that. So I think it's a good mix for him. I think he's going to have a great season. And honestly, fantasy wise, he might actually outproduce fantasy points wise Bijan just because of his receiving ability and how they might use him.
Yeah, I'm with you on there. My comp for him was actually Austin Eckler because he does have some ability to run in between the tackles as well. I think Kamara's another good one, but Kamara's more obvious. But I think he's going to be legit in that offense. As you said, he's basically a better version of DeAndre Swift coming out of college. I completely agree with that too. So the thing is, though, do you think that they signed David Montgomery there? How much do you think he takes away from Jahmyr Gibbs, like touch, not even just touch count, but fantasy total?
So I was kind of looking at what Jamal Williams did last year, and he never, even though he had a good year, all those touchdowns, he never had a ton of carries. I think most games he had 15 or under. So you give, say, Montgomery 15 or under, say you give Gibbs like 7 carries and 7 to 8 targets, which I would think you would want to try to get him the ball at minimum that amount. I think he's fine, and it'll be interesting. And since Jamison Williams is suspended, they might use Jahmyr Gibbs more in the passing game, moving on than they would have if Jamison Williams was there the whole year.
Yeah, I agree with you there too. So I was looking up snap counts for the Lions last year because I saw some stuff on Twitter, everyone calling Swift like a part-time player and all that stuff, which is completely nonsensical because I found out that snap count wise, when he was playing inactive, he actually had a higher snap count than Jamal Williams did. And so I think that we're going to kind of see that same situation play out with the Lions too, as you alluded to. But I think we should see Gibbs get a little more. I mean, he won 12th overall. They're going to utilize him. He's not just going to be on the back burner, and he's not, as long as he's more durable than Swift was. I think that Jahmyr Gibbs could be an elite wide receiver for the Lions as well as a running back for the Lions, especially if they plan to utilize him in the slot with Jamison Williams out, as you alluded to as well. It allows them to be a little more creative with their offense, and I think that makes Gibbs have the higher ceiling in fantasy than Bijan Robinson. I sound crazy. I feel like I'm crazy when I say that, but you think the same thing too, right? That he could have actually a higher ceiling than Robinson.
Right. It's kind of like the situation, like, say, a Kamara and a Jonathan Taylor. I mean, Bijan and Jonathan Taylor are still going to catch passes, but just the volume with the, pass game. I mean, especially in PPR leagues, just the dump offs and all that. And I don't think Jahmyr Gibbs is so much more talented, route running and everything than normal running backs. So, I think that'll be a big thing. And, back to the Swift thing, I do agree. They played Swift a lot. It just was frustrating. He wouldn't normally get the carries near the goal line. Once they got within the 10, unless Jamal Williams was gassed or something, they would give the ball to Jamal Williams. So that's, I think, what most people saw, the goal line type thing, that he didn't get those carries. But you see running backs can be successful if they don't get those carries, like an Eckler, like a Kamara. Travis Etienne isn't a very powerful back, same sort of thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. So to move on, those were the only two guys taken in the first round. We did have one second round running back, but more I want to talk about our favorite running backs in the draft. So I'm going to let you go first. Who was your favorite running back coming out of the draft that didn't get selected in the first round?
Yeah, one of my favorite ones was actually, it was Sean Tucker. He didn't get drafted at all. So, and not getting drafted, I don't really want, a lot of people are in on him going to Tampa Bay. But one of the players I really like that I think went to a pretty good situation is Chase Brown out of Illinois. One big knock was he is not very good at pass blocking, but when I talk about running backs, I like to say, are they a willing blocker? He's definitely a willing blocker. He'll put his nose in there. I just think technique-wise isn't great, but he's going to Cincinnati. Who knows what's going on with Joe Mixon? They just lost Perrine. Chris Evans is not really panned out, so he could definitely get some run there. He doesn't have the best hands, but he can catch the ball out of the backfield, and he's a great runner. Between the tackles, really powerful, can run people over, and I love to get running backs that are part of these explosive offenses because the more points you score, the more ability, to get in the red zone, the more availability to score. So
Who's
that really
that kid?
like him.
Who's that kid from Michigan that the Bengals have on a running back? Is it
Yeah, that's who I was talking about, Chris Evans.
No, they drafted somebody else like beforehand though, didn't they too?
Oh, I don't know. You mean recently?
I'm not sure. It could be. It might have been Evans. Yeah. Yeah, I think it was Evans. You're right. So I was zoning out, but I'm like trying to think of this guy. But
I'm glad you're listening to me. I'm glad you're listening
no,
to me.
you made me think because I wasn't sure if Brown could. Do you think he can? Do you think he's going to be able to supplant that? Like, because I mean, Evans didn't get too much run, but we did see him have some success in the playoffs. Like, he got a little bit more touches. I think he scored a touchdown during that playoff run for the Bengals too, if I'm not mistaken. He caught a reception. So I want to see if he could surpass him. But do you think he would be able to? My question is, do you think he would be able to like hold on to a RB1 position if for whatever reason Joe Mixon went out?
I don't think he would take it over all by himself, but I think he would. I think the split would be like 65-35, and that's more
65,
than
35
enough.
with Evans.
That's more enough in that offense because I mean Chris Evans isn't a big guy either, and from what I remember at Michigan, and at least what I've seen, he's not going to block that many people either. So Perrine, that was the thing that he was a good blocker too, and who knows with all the mitts and stuff. I mean, if Chase Brown performs very well this year, I mean, they might decide next year that like to let Mitson go and have him, or maybe draft another guy to go with Chase Brown. But in these situations when you get running backs late in the draft and they have success, these are when I like to, at least fantasy wise, kind of pounce on that success and then trade them for a higher value. Like I don't think Chase Brown's going to be like a starter 5-8 years. But if he has a good year, you could trade him kind of like a Damian Pierce. You could trade him for better value and just get more for that. Even if you love a player, you've got to understand fantasy wise, when to unload them so you can get the best value.
No, you're completely right. Although I will never sell Austin Eckler, which is a downfall.
Well, he's a little different. He's a little different.
Yeah, no, you're right. So actually, I love that pick. Everyone talked about like because of that Joe Mixon stuff with the news, the incident he had at his house. Everyone assumed that they would take like a very early pick, like that he would have been potentially in the running with a Bijan, like Robinson or Gibbs, or a Charbonnet. None of that happened. They ended up taking Chase Brown, who I don't know if he exactly fits that style of offense that the Bengals play, but I think he could be a good backup if he's given the opportunity. Like you said, he is a willing blocker, so that'll be interesting to see. So my favorite running back, as you know, is Kendre Miller. I freaking love the guy out of TCU. He's a great pass blocker. He could do a little bit better in between the tackles, but he's a great running back as well. Get one to a little bit of a crowded situation with New Orleans, and but Alvin Kamara, he's probably going to get suspended at some point. I don't think they draft Miller knowing that Kamara is going to be there. Like, I don't think he's going to be there. And Jamal Williams, as much as I love Jamal and his, personality, he's not too much more than a plotting guy, goal line, short carry running back. And he's not much of a pass catcher either. I mean, Miller isn't as well, but he does have the ability to. So I think that Miller could be the guy to end up replacing Alvin Kamara long term. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so. Let's say Kamara gets suspended this year. Let's just say that at worst, Miller and Jamal Williams, I think, is a 50-50 split. And I think at best, you could see a Swift Williams type deal where, he could get 60 and Williams get 40. Williams, I think, averaged a little over 4 yards a carry. Miller's more explosive, and I think he just has the more upside. So yeah, and even let's say Kamara doesn't get suspended, probably not good for this year. But you got to think that if Miller shows out at New Orleans and the camps and everything, they're going to start thinking about maybe cutting, Kamara loose since he's getting up there in age for a running back at least.
That's what I was about to ask you anyway. Like, even if you think Kamara avoids a suspension, do you think he has like a future in New Orleans?
I don't. This year, maybe next year. I mean, let's face it. With the change of the offense from Sean Payton, he really hasn't had those, the same success. So, it'll be interesting if they kind of want to turn to a more smash mouth type running style that they necessarily haven't had with Kamara. It's more of the slashing type guy.
Yeah, I think so too. You kind of alluded to that point too. Like, Kamara hasn't been like, you haven't really seen a game from him since Peyton's been gone where you're like, wow, that was a great game from Kamara. You know what I mean? It just hasn't really been there as much. And I mean, that being like, it kind of stinks too, because after Breeze left, it was just Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill. Like, and that was a bizarre situation. Then Andy Dalton as well. So he had an opportunity, I feel like, to really solidify himself as like an elite running back still, and he just wasn't able to do it anymore. So I think that's why New Orleans ended up drafting Kendre Miller. And I think that there should be a good opportunity for him to carve out somewhat of like a Josh Jacobs type role with the Saints but time remains to be seen. I got to see how good Jamal Williams is this year too. And we got to see how good Alvin Kamara can be and if he gets suspended. That's a lot of stuff up in the air. So I want to move on from our favorite running backs. So I want to talk about our sleepers, because I asked you what your sleeper was before we did the pod, and you didn't budge. So I want to hear who you got.
Yeah, so actually Chase Brown was kind of in the sleeper conversation, but mine is Zach Evans. He went to TCU, then went to Ole Miss. I won't want to say there's character issues in college, but there were some little issues where he decommitted from Georgia, went to TCU, and then there was reports that he didn't want to be the main guy and get too many carries, too much tread on the tire, everything. I've always said I thought Zach Evans was going to be the better NFL player than the college player. I was surprised he fell so far, but I heard that the Rams said that they really valued his talent and everything, and they've had a tumultuous time with Cam Akers. They drafted Kyren Williams last year, and I think he's just kind of the third down pass catching back. And I think Zach Evans could really do some things in that offense, especially with Cam Akers' injury history. So he's one of those late round backs that I could really see if he really breaks out. He could be the starter there for a few years.
That's a great pick. Didn't Cam Akers request a trade last season from the Rams too?
He did, and then he came back. I don't know. There's so much going on there, but I would think they're going to try to run the ball, even if Akers plays a lot. There'd be some sort of rotation because with Matthew Stafford's injury, Cooper Kupp coming back from injury, they're probably going to want to have a more balanced offense because that offense, works better when they have that running game and can go off of that for those play action deep shots.
Yeah, that's a great point. The Rams are a very injured team coming back from a lot of injuries this season. So it's going to be, I'm sure they want to play as many healthy bodies as they can. And I think Evans has a real opportunity, as you alluded to, that he could really take over that role. Cam Akers, he was not even that long ago, we were talking about, is Cam Akers done as a Los Angeles Ram? And that was a year ago, not even. So it's hard to get me to go from that to being, oh yeah, Cam Akers is 100% the guy now. I just don't see those two things happening. So I think that Evans has a real opportunity to take that away as well. So I think that's a great pick, man. That's a great pick. A lot of people are kind of sleeping on that because everyone had Evans really high on their board, and then they saw him fall, and now he's just completely like sent to the shadow realm of running backs now. But I think he's a great sleeper pick. So I was gonna pick Izzy from the Jets, and I really feel bad doing this because I had Khalil Herbert as a buy low prior to free agency.
Don't do
But
this, Tom. Don't do this.
I'm sorry, man. I gotta do it. So when the Bears picked my man Roschon Johnson, I was like, whoa, he has a chance to take over a starting job. And that's no disrespect to Khalil Herbert. I think that in the end, they could do a great 50-50 timeshare running back by committee approach. I already think that Roschon is going to step in as the pass catching back. I mean, they drafted some other kid, but he hasn't been as good. The name is slipping me. But and then also they have Donta Foreman, and he's not a pass catching back either. So Roschon has a real opportunity to step in from day one and already take over that pass catching opportunity. Sorry. Whether or not he's able to supplant Herbert as the main running back, that remains to be seen. I know you have a strong opinion on this. I want to get your opinion on that.
I mean, no, I did not love to see him get picked by the Bears. Um, I know in the fantasy community, people were pumping him up like way up, like saying he was the running back 3 in this class and everything. And I don't see that, but he definitely could. We don't really know how this coaching staff feels about Khalil Herbert. I mean, I guess fairly well because they let Montgomery walk, and but they did bring in Foreman, so you know, I think it's all gonna. I think it's a pretty open competition when they get into camp. So Khalil Herbert's just gonna have to, be better in that sense. Really can't start off slow because he could really be overtaken by both backs.
Who do you think ends up being the RB1 there this season? Do you think it's more of a three-way split, or do you have like Herbert and then Foreman and then Roschon, or how do you have that playing out actually?
I mean, I guess out of the three, Herbert's the passing back. I mean, possibly. So I mean, at least he has carved out that role. He's returned kicks before, that type of thing. But I mean, I think it could get really messy, which I hate because right before they picked him, I made a trade for Khalil Herbert, and it really could possibly backfire on me. I traded Zay Flowers and got my boy Jaden Reed and Khalil Herbert. Now I feel great about Jaden Reed, but the Herbert part, I might pick a different running back to put in that deal if I knew they were going to pick someone in. What did they pick him in the fourth or the fifth round?
I th-
Roshan.
I think it was the fourth round. I'm pretty sure it was the fourth.
Either one, it muddies it a little bit. Um, but I've always believed in Khalil Herbert's talent coming into the draft before he got drafted, and I thought the Bears were a spot where he could take over. I remember when he got drafted. I said on Twitter, I was like, if he does well, I could see a situation where they let Montgomery walk, and then Herbert could be the starter. And everyone was like, "Oh, they would never let Montgomery walk," and they did. The only thing is, he might not be the starter, but I was half right at the very least. So we'll have to see how that running back competition goes.
Yeah, I remember actually seeing that and you getting into arguments about it. Like, you're crazy, man. And you ended up being right, man. They ended up shipping Montgomery away. They didn't even bring in. I don't think Foreman. Do you think Foreman plays like a significant role this year, like at all, or do you think he's more of like the thumper kind of goal line short yardage guy, or do you think he gets like any type of significant touch or just situational?
Do you know what kind of contract he got?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I think it might just be a 1 year.
Because I think he played really well for Carolina last year. I thought he looked really good. Um, I think it might be one of those situations which would suck for fantasy where they have all three guys and they give all three of them carries early, and whoever has the hot hand they'll go with. I think that possibly could be it, especially if Herbert doesn't really separate himself from the other two guys.
Yeah, so you're saying like a San Francisco type situation before Christian McCaffrey got there?
I hope not, but I could easily, see that. And also with, Justin Fields, if he continues to run, I mean, that takes running away from the running backs. I think Herbert fits the best with Fields' skill set in the backfield. Some, RPOs, read options, and everything like that. But who knows how that offense is going to kind of develop now that they have some more wide receiver weapons and, they have more players in the running back with a little versatility.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I had a question for you. Um, so we know we both are speculating that Brees Hall is probably not going to come back, healthy to start the year. Who do you think takes over that Jets backfield for the first couple of weeks while we assume that they ease Brees Hall in there? Do you think they rely more on like Michael Carter or Izzy, who they drafted on early on day 3, or Zonovan Knight? Do you think that's like a similar situation as what we might see in Chicago to start the season, or do you think one of those guys ends up taking over?
So, I mean, they keep on drafting people. So, I mean, they can't love Michael Carter that much. I mean, I don't think Michael Carter has shown that he's like this great, like passing back, receiving back. And Izzy, I thought was great receiving the ball. And I think the only reason he didn't go higher was at Pittsburgh, they did a rotation back. So you didn't really get to see him like have the full role. I think he's a pretty complete player. And I really like him, and I could see him, if Brees is slow to come back, getting it, a big part. But I mean, Zonovan Knight had some real. I'm going to tell you, I didn't think Zonovan Knight was going to see a field, coming in the draft because his last year of college, I thought he was slow, but I don't know what happened. But last year for the Jets, he looked fast, and it might be interesting if they like Izzy. I don't, Michael Carter might not be on the team. If they like Bam and Izzy, because I guess they would be cheaper. So I don't know what Michael Carter's deal was.
Yeah, man, that was such a disappointment. Not only from like a Jets fan perspective, but from like fantasy too. He just didn't play as well as I thought he was, especially given the opportunity. Because he got the first crack at being the RB1 after Brees Hall went down, and he just didn't really do that great of a job. And then they drafted Izzy Abikananda. I can't pronounce that dude's name.
I
Kanda.
never try to. I never try to.
Yeah.
That's why I keep on saying Izzy.
Yeah, I'm gonna end up having to put like a reel in where it just But I think so. Andrew Golden of Jets X Factor, when the Jets drafted Izzy, he basically said he's kind of like a finisher back. So we're gonna see too. Like I think even not just to start the season, but kind of going out throughout the season, we're gonna see Brees once he's fully healthy. He's gonna kind of take control for a bit, and I think we see a lot more of Izzy about third quarter, fourth quarter. They're trying to really drive home a win if the Jets are up. Izzy is like a dark horse guy for me, depending on how healthy Brees is to start the season, and b if he's able to like supplant Michael Carter or Zonovan Knight early in the off season. Do you think that's possible? You think he could do that?
I think it's possible. And I know with Brady, it was big, like if he trusted you, and I'm guessing
Yeah.
Rodgers is the same way. So if like
Mm.
say Brees Hall isn't on the practice field like right away, and let's say if Izzy like gains his trust, I think that's a big deal. Like say Michael Carter like misses a block, but like Izzy comes in and like gets the blocks or makes the catches because Rodgers is that guy that when you make a mistake, when you drop a pass, pretty much you're done. Like you see the disgust in his face and his body language. So, I definitely think, it's kind of like, with Khalil Herbert for the Bears. I was talking about Izzy needs to perform well early on, and that could really help him down the road.
Nah, I completely agree, man. So we reached our time limit. We're about to wrap it up. This is episode 2. We stumbled and bumbled our way to the finish with some names there, but I'm glad we got it done. I really want to talk tight ends next, so we'll end up doing tight ends at some point. So, Brandon, let them know where they can find you once again.
Yeah, my name is Don't Cancel Me Lamar now, so you can't see it. But yeah, I'm Brandon Haye at Twitter. Find me at HayB3. And then you can find my content at DLF. Just released undrafted free agent article, kind of analysis of who you can count on right away, and then some that you can kind of stash for in a couple years.
Yeah, it is a great article. I suggest everybody to read it. Check out Brandon's profile on DLF. This is Thomas Christopher from the League Winners. You can find me on Twitter at ThomasCP_NFL. You could also find me covering the New York Jets at Jets X Factor and Gangrene Nation. Appreciate everybody who's checking us out. Brandon, I'll see you next time, man. You all take care.